Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to one of the more unique sessions you'll be at. I tend to do those panels with a little bit of different types of formats. My name is Steve Bradbury. I will further introduce myself in a few minutes. We've got 6 panelists. Hopefully we'll have a 7th making an appearance if Allie Greenwald comes. We are going to be talking about OVNs, or basically we're going to talk about OTT for the next hour or so. All the different ways you can consume content beyond the traditional ways, what Victor calls the new online video networks, which aren't necessarily so new anymore. So what I'm going to do is ask each panelist to introduce themselves for about 30 seconds. If you want to read more about them, you can go online. You can look in the bios in the material that you got handed out. So why don't we just start off? Bill, we'll start with you, even though we're not in the same order as what's up there.
No worries.
Go for it.
My name is Bill Masterson. I'm co-founder of a company by the name of Believe Entertainment Group. We're headquartered in New York. We specialize in partnering with A-list talent, everyone from LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Jennifer Lopez, Tiesto, and we produce original content, and we work with a number of different platforms like Time Inc., AOL, YouTube, to essentially syndicate and partner with them from a distribution standpoint, as well as work with brands to plug them into the shows that we produce.
AJ Vernette, I run sales and marketing for Zype, and essentially we're a direct-to-consumer end-to-end platform that allows you to upload content from anywhere and broadcast to everywhere. We specialize in OTT and kind of helping people monetize their content in multiple environments.
Hi, I'm Anthony Laser. I'm the North American Content VP for Dailymotion. Dailymotion is a video sharing site that's both UGC and premium content. It's based in Paris, but we're also located in New York, and I run our office here in Santa Monica.
Madam Goldstein, VP of Business Development for Zephyr. We're a technology and data company, and we've created a signal around content on social platforms, particularly video content. So social video platforms like YouTube, and we identify and organize and activate that information for our client sets, which are both brands and content owners.
Scott Robson, I'm VP of Content Operations at Gracenote. We're the world's largest metadata company, essentially. So it's kind of a unique seat on the table here because these guys are all content creators. I'm more of a content normalizer, if you will, helping these guys get distribution and eyeballs and money and all that sort of thing.
Hey everybody, I'm Larry LeBeau, and I'm the president of production at SXM. We're a digital production studio, and most of the original series or series that are brought to us to produce are produced as branded content pieces. We also partner, like several of the other panelists, with online networks, from traditional online networks, studio networks, television networks, to newer networks like Dailymotion or YouTube.
And again, I'm Steve Bradbury. I'm just in the process of soon to be launching a company called Deep Sports. So I'm not going to tell you a lot about it other than to say it's consider sports as a lifestyle as opposed to necessarily sports as just a game. I won't tell you anything else because I'd have to kill you all. But if you want, you're welcome to follow Deep Sports TV on Twitter and on Facebook. Feel free. By the way, before we get going, if you could just silence your phones or put them on Do Not Disturb or whatever, just so we don't get phones making all sorts of sounds here, that would be great. So what I do when I do these panels, I like to bring in a little bit of data, a couple of data points, not really for discussion, more just to kind of set the stage. So Global Web Index, you can sign up for this. You can get it free every day. It comes to my inbox. Every day they put a chart up some piece of data, some more useful, some not. This one actually is very interesting, showing that millennials are watching 4x as much online TV as boomers. So without worrying about the numbers if you can't read in the back, the blue pyramids are linear TV, and the kind of pinkish ones are online TV, and then you've got millennials to the left, Gen X in the middle, and baby boomers to the right. Oh, and Allie Greenwald has made an appearance. All right, thank you, Allie. It's glad to see you. We know each other, so it's okay. Anyway, so this is just an interesting snapshot of where consumption is going by different cohorts. from younger to older. Not going to, again, engage in a lot of discussion around it, just wanted to show it. And the other one I'll show you is I've been looking around for research, and there isn't a lot about how is Twitter doing with the NFL. And of course, because I'm in a sports space now, I'm curious about it myself. So I found these numbers that don't necessarily mean a lot, but it does show there has been growth from week 1 to week 2, week 3. That week 1 is actually the second week of the NFL season. So that's weeks 2, 3, and 4 of the NFL season, and there was no Thursday night Twitter feed last week. The next one will be this Thursday because there's some contractual issues around that. But it just shows that it has grown, although I will note that in an article I saw, there were some rumors that advertisers were asking for some make good, so maybe the performance hasn't been as strong as it's been. I don't know if anybody have any other insights about how Twitter is doing with the NFL?
I think they're doing well because the NFL, there was an article that just said the NFL's viewership dropped off 15%.
Though I was at that New Lion Sports Conference that's down in Manhattan Beach a couple weeks ago, and they had a NFL exec that is just blaming. He was trying to blame the fact that some of the stars like Peyton Manning and what's his name, Romo's hurt, and that is leading for some. That's one of the reasons they're saying that numbers are down is a lack of stars right now, or at least big stars.
Or there weren't big marquee matchups yet in the season.
Yeah, that's another thing.
So there's probably many reasons and many more reasons why. And I think when we get to the end of the season, we'll have a better idea of how useful this was for the NFL, how useful it was for Twitter, and whether the NFL is just using Twitter as a kind of a test bed and then it'll go somewhere else next year, or they'll continue this relationship remains to be seen. So before we get into the meat of the panel, I want to give Allie a chance to just introduce herself, give about 30 seconds of who you are so they have a context.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Allie Greenwald. I work on the BrandWorks team over at Fullscreen Media, where I oversee sales and brand strategy for our kid and toy, some of our auto, and gaming clients.
So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. We're going to use a format that I started using earlier this year called opportunity or challenge, okay? And it's actually very simple. What's going to happen is on the next screen, I'm going to put up a dozen words that are somehow related to this OTT, OVN world that we live in. Each panelist is going to, in turn, pick a word and speak to whether they believe that word represents an opportunity or a challenge or both in the space. We'll go at least one round all the way through. So there are 12 words up there. We'll get through at least 7. If we have time, we can do more. We'll do each one for about 5 or 6 minutes, get a few pieces of feedback from the panel, see if anybody in the room has anything you want to share. If you do decide you have something you want to contribute, the only request is don't get up and give a speech about who you are and what you're doing and what you're selling here. You can do that afterwards. Just get up and say your name and make your point in about 20 or 30 seconds. So this way more people can have a shot to speak, okay? So, opportunity or challenge, and by the way, the panelists have not seen this list until just now. They did have opportunity to kind of throw some ideas of which ones they wanted up there, but this is the first time they're actually taking a look at it. So there are 12 words up there, or 12 phrases up there that are related to this space. Are they opportunities, or are they challenges, or are they both? Okay? So I'll give them all about a half a second to look at it, give you all a second to look at it and see what you think. And Larry, since you're sitting there the closest, it's easier for you to see. I'm going to ask you to pick one first.
I'll choose brands, just because that's a lot of what SXM's business has been the past 9 years. And it's always been an opportunity, but I think as much as it will remain an opportunity, it has become more of a challenge, only because the distribution of where brands need to reach people has changed so much. There's so many different silos in which they can reach people now. I think for the kind of content that we do, with bigger budget, sort of premium content for digital, it's become harder to get the kind of budgets from brands that we're used to. And I think it's just a fact that brands need to reach people in more places than they have before.
So there's a number of you on the panel that have worked with brands. So do all of you think that do you agree with Larry that there's an opportunity, but are there more challenges? I mean, Bill, you do a lot of work with brands.
Yeah, I mean, I think the excuse me, the challenge, and really depending on who the audience is, the challenge for, I think, content creators is that today brands have more opportunities than they ever have on many different platforms. And so from a, content creator, I think the challenge for us has been, continuing to find, really premium content opportunities that consumers are going to want to care about. Because if you can create great content that consumers are going to watch and pass along, the eyeballs control the brand and the brand dollars. So I think it's a challenge, but I think that if you stay focused on sort of your core competencies, and one of our core competencies is partnering with, people that really influence and make a difference, whether it's Jennifer Lopez or LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, those things allow us to, I think, face the challenge head on and allow us to have, I wouldn't call it ease, but a little bit easier of a time talking with brands about content opportunities.
I think the barrier for entry into the OTT space in particular has gone way down. So brands like Marriott are becoming their own content creators. I'm working with most of the people on this panel. Mondelez, Dove, it goes out. I don't know if you know this, you can Google it. Dove has its own Roku channel that they're basically targeting moms. They're charging $5.99 a month, and they fill it up with animation. And in between all those little segments that their kids are watching, they're hitting you over the head with a personalized commercial, and then they're taking that data and they're going out and they're putting it up on your Facebook page. Like, that wasn't possible 4 or 5 years ago. And that's a licensing version, but people like Marriott, they're doing full-blown content films and going out and asking you to engage in a polite way, and they're reminding you that the brand is alive and kicking.
You raised something interesting that's been a trend. Mondelez is one, where these brands are setting up their own studios, and they're now making the deals directly. So does that cut you guys out as the middleman? Do you find that there's more brands doing things on their own?
I think it
legitimizes.
I think it legitimizes, and the days of old where you just had a creative agency giving you direction as a brand, giving you direction on what you should do, and then they'd produce it and then give it back to you, and then your media properties would actually, or your media agency would then flight those, whether they're 30-second spots. The brands are more taking control, and I think there's always going to be a certain amount of bandwidth that the brands can take on, even if they launch their own studios. And so for us, we look at it as nothing but more of a legitimizer for all the things that we've been doing for the past 9 years.
Anybody else have a sense
Yeah,
about that?
one of the partners that we like to work with in the U.S. Around, different event activations is Red Bull. Red Bull's really smart about content creation, and they ask a lot of questions about what they can do to optimize their channel on our platform. They're very communicative about what they're planning and as far as their slate in the months out, and they do a great mix of AVOD content and live stream content, and our demographic, what has traditionally been our demographic, which skews a little bit more towards male, younger male. There's a nice connection there. So I really like working with brands around some of their branded content, and at least in that context.
Allie, what is full screen? What's full screen's perspective on this?
Yeah, I think similarly to what AJ was saying a little earlier, I think there's challenge, but there's opportunity there, and I think especially as brands start to build out their own capabilities, there's still going to be a need for kind of like the adult in the room, so to speak, to kind of help guide that and to have experts in the space. I think something we try to do at Full Screen, because we do work with a lot of content creators, is help creators think like brands and help brands think like content creators, and then when you're marrying the two, definitely come at it from a place of, okay, here's what the brand wants, here's what the creator wants, but ultimately what does the audience want, and how do you kind of create a good balance between all three of those things? Because I think that if it's tilted too far in one direction, or too far towards what the brand wants, then maybe the audience isn't going to like it, and you kind of have to have a happy medium there across the board. So, but yeah, I think ultimately it's I see it as an opportunity, but not an opportunity that comes with challenges, so to say.
Got it. I want to get a couple of opinions from the audience, but let's just get a sense of who's in the room first. How many of you are content creators? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you are brand people? Brands? Okay, we all want to talk to you later. How many of you are on the, let's say, on the business side versus on the creative side, doing deals as opposed to, okay? And how many of you are on the technology front? Okay. Legal side? Legal? Okay. Anybody feel not represented in that group? Okay, or any group? Okay, good. So, has anybody had an experience either creating content for a brand or being a brand and working with a content creator? Anybody has had an experience about it that is either a positive experience or a negative experience, or one that they see is a trend to where this is going in the future? You all a little comatose from lunch? Yes.
I just will make a comment that I think that brands, they are getting a lot sharper, and they're trusting themselves. And they're like, rather than outsourcing a lot of this, both responsibility and creative, and even, media buys, I think that they are, up in their game, and that's been my experience. They're doing a lot more themselves. I think that's a trend.
Is that a good trend, that they're taking more control?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
They've got a media platform, so I'm not sure. I'm hoping they'll
Okay.
use us.
Anybody else have a thought on this? We'll go on to the next topic. Okay. Scott, you want to give us one?
Sure. I'm going to go with discovery.
Discovery. Okay. Is
Yeah.
discovery an opportunity or a challenge?
I think it's
Or both?
It's both, actually. I mean, well, from where I sit, it's an opportunity because what GraceNote does is help people discover content. I think it's a challenge for all of the rest of the people on the panel because they've got all this great stuff they're creating and they're trying to get it to surface in a lot of different places. What GraceNote is able to bring to the table is to sort of normalize and standardize the content, apply a basic set of metadata. It's what we've been doing for years for film studios, for TV networks. We work with all the major MVPDs. Now we're moving into the space on the digital side, and we're working with MCNs because we're hearing from our clients like a Comcast and a Cablevision and people like that they want the content that all these guys are creating. They just don't know how to get it into their world. And once they get it in there, they don't know how to track it or what to do with it. So they need that sort of traditional veneer layered over the top of this sort of non-traditional content so that they can get it in front of lots of different eyeballs. And I think that creates a huge opportunity for the people here to expand beyond YouTube, to find new audiences, to find new ways to monetize, and take advantage of different audiences that are sitting out there waiting to be tapped.
So it's been posited that all the rest of you are look at discovery as a challenge. Is that a fair statement?
I think he's onto something here. I think this metadata is like crucial. If you guys look at all the commercials Amazon and all these other platforms are rolling out, you always see them talking to a fictitious device called Alexa or Siri. Everything is moving towards keyword search. I know for us, we take metadata and discoverability super serious. So every time a show is created for like a client, Konami is one of our clients, we're creating something on average of like 1,000 data points, metadata pages that are going to be associated in order to increase their searchability. Because if you think about how typical online platforms have been, it's like you do a search, it pulls up the app. Well, what's happening inside the OTT environments in particular is like you type in skiing or Italy, and it's going to pull up individual pieces of content, and then it's going to start sorting it by an algorithm that it's deduced upon your own searchable habits on that platform, and then start pulling up apps and things like that. So it's key if you're going to be putting content out on these platforms that you are thinking about every possible association to that content in order to make it discoverable as you go into this new world. But that is an opportunity in itself because you can increase your eyeballs overnight.
I think at Fullscreen we definitely consider discovery to be a huge opportunity and something that we consider ourselves to be like masters of the universe at helping our clients conquer. I think, there's definitely so much you can do in terms of metadata and whatnot from an organic perspective, but then to complement that with a really strong paid strategy as well is I think tantamount to that success. So.
What's the one part about discovery that has one evolution or one notable change about discovery that's really made a difference in the last 2 or 3 years? I'm not talking about search, like say, or just social, but specifically, what's the one thing that's really, in even the last year, has really made a difference?
Sure. I mean, I think that the social media footprints, and to be very specific, when you're talking about working with major stars that have tens of millions of people following them across their social media footprint, really not up until the last 18 months has that really been prevalent in terms of really distributing original content. And I think that, the word influencers, which we'll probably get into at some point, these A-listers have been influencers their entire lives, and this is the reason why they're endorsement worthy. I think for us, one of the things we always do, one of the sort of check the boxes that we need to do when we're creating content and spending millions of dollars to do so, is making sure we're partnering with someone who's going to make a difference, not just to a demographic that's going to get a brand interested, but someone who's going to be able to really drive their own audiences. And some of these, A-list stars have become their own major media networks and distribution platforms on their own, with things like, Instagram, with things like Twitter, Facebook. And so, for us, that, sort of discovery process, while always a challenge, utilizing things like data, but, really getting to the core of sort of, 101, let's work with someone who really makes a difference, who has a massive audience that we can tap into literally from day one.
Do you all find that the social platforms are cooperating with you as content owners and helping you, or are they hindering you? Is Facebook being your friend or your foe? Is Twitter, Snapchat? I mean, pick any one of them you want. This is not to beat up on anyone, but just, in other words, it's so important, as you just mentioned, to get presence in Facebook for a piece of content. You're doing a piece of content, you're spending a lot of money on it, you're trying to get a presence in Facebook. Is Facebook making it easy for you, or they make it harder for you? When you look at your feed, your news feed, is it so jam-packed with so much stuff because you've got so many people, your friends, that there's just no way to parse through all of this? Are they, so I'm saying, are they being cooperative? Are they supporting what you're trying to do? Anybody, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, look, platforms have their own agenda, and any content owner or creator or technology company has to look at a platform as what they are, and they're hopefully a partner, right? But like any partner has their own incentives and reasons for partnering with you. So I think there are things that these platforms have done to help. There are things that they've done to hurt. At the end of the day, you have to do what's going to be best for you and your content, and not. I think the biggest risk is when folks have become beholden to one particular platform, or the data that they've put into a platform is now locked inside that one platform. Because what we've seen, we're a data and tech company. More and more the walls around these platforms are going up. So it's very easy to put things in, contents, data, et cetera. Very hard to get them out, and almost impossible to move them to another platform, particularly in the form of data. So it's a risk, but there's no way around it. The eyeballs are there, and so when you go fishing, you go where the fish are, and it's hard to avoid.
So I'll take a little informal survey in the room here, and then I'll get to your question. Curious to know, what of the different social platforms, which one would you more likely look to get some information on some new piece of content? In other words, there's all these different platforms. So would it be Facebook? Would it be YouTube? Would you be going to Snapchat? Would you go to Twitter? Would you go to Instagram? Just a couple of you. Where would you go? Where's your instinct? Where would you go?
Twitter or YouTube?
Twitter or YouTube. Okay, just a couple of the people call out. Where would you go? Instagram. Okay. A couple other people. Where else would you go? Where would you go? Excuse me? YouTube first. Okay. Anybody else? Twitter. Okay. Anybody else? Interesting. It's a little kind of all over the place. And that's, I think, one of the challenges.
Doesn't it really depend? Depends on what specific type of information you're looking for, though. I think different platforms can
True.
be really tailored to different verticals.
To some degree, it does make a difference. Yet you still have choices to make. You're putting out a piece of content, Bill. You have to decide, where am I putting my resources?
Sure.
Am I doing 5 extra pieces of content and putting it on YouTube and pushing everybody there? Am I tweeting about it because there's some specific timely nature? Am I using Snapchat because I want to go that demographic? I mean, there are choices to be made, but still, it's a challenge because you can't afford to do all of them. This gentleman had a comment or question?
My question was, if I'm looking for a piece of content, and I'm thinking of Roku specifically, but I can pick a different platform. I'm wondering, do you guys think that metadata is going to get more aligned or more consolidated in terms of format. The reason I ask is, if I pick something like, I want to see Haley Duff's cooking show, or whatever. If I search on Roku right now, it'll only search the top 50 or so channels, but there's thousands of channels. But what that means to me is, who knows what sort of business deals are being done, but it means only 50 of those have perfectly aligned metadata that they can search to give me a result. And I can throw up a new Roku channel, but I don't necessarily know how to order my metadata to meet their requirements. And I'm just wondering if you see, is this a concern, getting that data for your video more aligned with everything else so that you can aid that discovery?
So basically the word standardization, which comes in and out of this conversation for years now. So let's ask the
that's what we're trying to help bring to the table, and because I think if everybody's working from the same structure, everybody's going to benefit from that. We hear it time and again from the customers that we're working with. Hey, I'd love to get that, Miranda Sings onto my platform, but I can't ingest it because it doesn't match up with the traditional metadata that we've got. And, that's when we have conversations with various MCNs, those are sort of the points that we're trying to cover and that they're trying to come to agreement on is, what are those 6 or 8 elements that everybody needs to have checked so that it flows through the ecosystem. One of the things that GraceNote offers is, and not to turn this into an ad, I apologize, but we have this thing called the TMS ID, and for the film and TV industry, that's sort of like the lifeblood of the ecosystem. It's like a social security number for every single piece of content, every single piece of talent that's involved in that content. And with that number, that sort of Dewey Decimal System or whatever, you're able to find and track and follow and get paid and all those kinds of things.
So that goes a ways to what he was talking about.
Exactly.
That it only goes part of the way, and that therein lies the challenge, because as you said, if there are 1,000 channels on Roku and the search results give you the top 50, you may be missing something below it, and somebody's making a determination that those are the 50 you should see, when number 57 might be the one you really want to see. So that's inherently a challenge. All right, let's move on to the next one. Allie, do you want to pick one of these on the screen, or should I skip you and go on to the next one?
Sure, I can
Pick one.
choose.
Pick one on the screen and tell us if it's an opportunity or challenge.
Well, I guess I'd be doing the MCNs represented here a disservice if I didn't say influencers. So
influencers. Okay, so do influencers represent an opportunity or a challenge?
Ugh.
You picked it.
It's both. It's definitely both. I think one of the things that I always, not warn, but express to clients, especially new clients that we're working with, is that, at the end of the day, if you're working with an ad network and something breaks or something, turns off on the campaign for whatever reason, an engineer can go into the system and fix it, and your campaign's back on. If your talent, who's an influencer, was maybe had a little bit too much to drink the night before, or did something irresponsible because they're, 22-year-old who's making a ton of money, and we try to keep them as professional as possible, but at the end of the day, everyone's only human. That's human error, and so there's always going to be situations. Or there always can be situations on any influencer campaign where someone's sick or something happens, or life gets in the way. And so I think there are inherent challenges in working with influencers. But as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the reasons why it's important to have the adult in the room, so to speak. When you're working with influencers in particular, and I think a lot of us have been doing it for so long that we really do consider ourselves experts in the space, and I think a lot of that comes down to how you handle those challenges. And I think those are the types of things that set the really good influencer marketing companies apart from maybe the newbies, or I don't know. I think we definitely feel as though there are new influencer marketing companies popping up every day, left and right, or ad agencies are now building out their own influencer marketing arm. And I think it's important to have a partner that you really trust and can turn to as an expert when going after an influencer marketing campaign in general. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important around the influencer sort of world is an understanding that each different platform is its own medium, and trying to educate, whether it be a brand or whoever it may be, that what is working on Snapchat is not going to work on YouTube. What works on Instagram, even though Instagram is kind of like Snapchat now, may not work on Snapchat. But I think that crossover is one of the critical challenges right now. There's huge audiences on YouTube that are community based, and the content's important, but it's really just a impetus to get a conversation going. And they've collected huge audiences on that platform. So then the challenge is, if you try and take that to another platform, can you bring that community over? I think we found, if you look at an example like Vessel, that's a lot harder than simply just having a 2-day window. You're looking at a lean forward platform with YouTube, with that a huge community is built up, and just having some of that content in a lean back environment with a 2-day window isn't enough to create a scale of audience. So those are some of the challenges you still face with influence, with having an influencer strategy.
I think defining what an influencer is one of the biggest challenges, because I think while UGC 5 years ago, 7 years ago, probably 5 to 7 years ago, was something brands wanted to stay far, far away from. You said UGC in a meeting with a brand. Thank you, have a good things. Thanks for letting us know you were here. And influencers have become, I think, synonymous with YouTube stars, the Instagram crew, the Instagram girls. Yes, I think there are massive, massive success stories related to women on Instagram that are fashionistas and the youngest new sort of, influencing trends. The problem is, how do we cut that off, and how do we define who an influencer is? Is it defined by you have an audience of 5 million people in your channel following you? Why? Because you drank a bottle of Jack Daniels and you ate a dozen eggs with their shells on? No, it's the other side of it, which is, I'm a woman, I'm 18 years old, I went to FIT, I identify all these trends, and now the biggest buying institutions out there are looking at my posts to see how I'm influencing my audience, who's following me for a specific reason other than nonsense.
Does anybody in this room consider themselves an influencer? Anybody, like a YouTube influencer? Anybody at all? Okay, so I'm going to ask the question that I was going to ask 2 ways. I'm going to ask it 1 way. So George Costanza, remember from Seinfeld, always talked about wanting to have hand, which is basically having leverage. Okay, so the simple question is, who's got hand? Does the influencer have the hand, or does the brand or the content creator, when you're looking to make a deal, who's got the leverage today, generally speaking? And I get that every one is going to be different. Every negotiation is different, but generally speaking, who's got more leverage, the influencer or the people who want to hire the influencer?
I would say the influencer.
Yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
so many of the branded shows that we're able to sell, when you talk about it being an opportunity or a challenge with a brand, most of the opportunity that it comes easily is when you're able to attach the right influencer to a project to bring them on board. So for us, not only has that always been important, but it's also been important in terms of the brand having reach for the show or the project when you finish it. So that's a big part of their strategy, and a lot of it, even from having done campaigns for Samsung with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and James Franco, it's been equally as important for brands when we've done campaigns with just simply fashion influencers who don't have a name but have a huge online following on social media. So
even with the volume of influencers that are out there that Fullscreen has and others, you still say that influencers have more leverage?
Because they have to be loyal to their fans first and foremost, and if they sell out, they basically lose fans by the truckloads pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges for a brand when engaging in an influencer is, how do you use them as a conduit to tell, let's say you're Jeep and you're doing a road trip story. How do you use them on Vine differently from Snapchat, from YouTube, from Facebook, from Twitter? They're all different mediums. You're creating a piece of content. One size does not fit all anymore. And if you're going to do an influencer campaign right, what you're doing is you're activating them on their most successful platforms, and you're figuring out how to get the same message out, but a slightly different version of it. It's actually a very interesting time for brands that can do that right, because they can focus and just make a huge splash.
Can I touch on something that both Bill and Larry brought up, actually, which is like, Bill, you said, how do you define influence?
Yeah.
Larry, you were saying that, the James Franco of the world, sometimes just as important as the fashionista. And I think what you're touching on is something we've thought about a lot, and it's really about, the reach is one thing, and that's, I think, how traditionally kind of influencer talents has been defined. How many followers do you have? How many eyeballs, et cetera. Something we've thought about a lot is we're one of those folks that popped up with an influencer marketing business kind of overnight. We bought a company about 2 years ago. We don't care at all about reach, or I'll say a little bit. It gives us a little bit of a signal of who we should keep an eye on, but it's engagement that we care about. And so we don't manage any talent. As you know, it's tough, right? There's ups and downs. We just track the data on all these folks. So we track data on almost 100,000 influencers across all social platforms, and we care about what actually happens when they upload something, publish something. Because Bill, to your point, how do you define influencer? I think by the definition of the word, it's when you're able to get someone to act, really move or do something. And so the way that we use that signal is shares, likes, comments, actual engagements on things. So I think just throw in there, I think it's an interesting point. And you really said it well, which is the influence of some of these stars that most of us, all of us would know, oftentimes, many times exceeds that of a James Franco.
Yeah.
Quick comment, and then we'll move on to the next one.
So I'm a casting director. I've actually cast something for full screen, and I've specialized in the influencer world. I've done like 6 or 7 influencer-specific films. So it's kind of a generic question, but where do you see the influencers going in the next 5, 10 years? Honestly, do we see it's going to peak and then crash and burn, and some of them may be at the top? So just kind of generic.
I don't think it ever goes away. I think it continues to define itself and redefine itself. Influencers back in, early days,
Specifically more of like
the traditional
like,
YouTube
the
stars and everything else.
15 to 25-year-olds.
I think there'll continue to be consolidation there because one of the things that I said earlier is you can have a great audience and huge audience and be recognized as an influencer, but you don't really have a reason to be influencing except for the fact that you have a huge audience. Other people that are becoming sort of experts, I think there'll be more of a turnaround of people becoming experts, whether it be sports, fashion, or whatever. I think that as it will start to sort of level out. I know everyone sort of went this way, from brands and agencies. We got to have influencer campaigns, and every single brand said, "Who's your influencers that are following you, and how are you leveraging social media?" It was pretty much the same thing everyone was saying, 5 or 7 years ago with search. How are we going to leverage that? So I think there'll be some normalization, but I don't think it ever goes away because I think the whole new distribution of media and the way people engage with social platforms are going to continue to push it forward.
All right, we're going to move on. Sir, what would you like?
Let's talk about monetization.
Oh, you want to make money? Okay. Is monetization an opportunity or a challenge?
I would say it is a challenge in this world, especially right now. So, couple macro trends. So, and I'll talk a little bit, I guess, about the brands come into this as well. But there's a couple different avenues to monetization in the digital video world. I guess advertising supported, brand dollars, get people actually to pay for content, subscription. Maybe a couple I'm missing there. You all can help me out, but. A couple of macro trends we've seen, just one example on YouTube, the supply of content has increased at a far faster rate than the demand for it from the advertiser ecosystem. So simple kind of supply-demand equation, and for every piece of content or view is worth less compared to apples. More than 70 or 80% of viewership on any given content is now outside of the United States. And the advertising ecosystems there are much less developed than places like US or UK, et cetera. So, the advertising ecosystem really hard. Brand dollars. We were talking earlier about brands. I'm very hopeful that's an opportunity. I think we all are because there's a shift happening. I think the shift has happened definitely slower than we'd all like. So I think slower than the data would tell you that it should, right? The 70 billion going to TV and the whatever is about a tenth of that going to digital video. And then subscription. And some subscription platforms have worked very well, like a Netflix. and there are many, many, many out there. You mentioned the Dove one. I had no idea that was there. I don't know how many subscribers they have, but I can't imagine it would last that long if it didn't have big brand dollars behind it. So I think it's a big challenge. I don't have an answer for it.
I would piggyback on that, and I agree with Adam, that one of the big challenges as far as getting brand dollars into the ecosystem is the fact that we don't have a common sort of metric. Linear, as flawed as it is, has Nielsen, and you know, it's easy for people to track film dollars from a week-to-week basis. One of the things that's difficult for us is what is a view on YouTube and what is a view on Dailymotion, and especially what is a view on Facebook, are vastly different things. And so it's interesting to look at what are the KPIs for a specific platform. You know, I've heard of some brands looking at Snapchat screen saves as a key metric for that platform. So it's so fractured what are the KPIs from one platform to another that I mean, maybe there are very savvy folks at brands that are saying, I need this from this specific thing from this platform and this specific thing. But a lot of times there's an education that goes on in some of those early conversations around what does a view really mean, or how do you judge engagement on your platform? So that becomes a challenge.
Well, just the fact that a view on one platform is 6 seconds and a view on another is 30 seconds.
Yeah.
In terms of counting as a view.
Well, not only that,
in
but
of
look
itself,
at Facebook. Facebook, 80% of those views, they don't even have audio turned on.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? You know?
There was actually an article, I think published today in Adweek, that talked exactly about this and how do you compare, that there needs to be standardization of what a view is across different platforms, which I thought was interesting. Because each platform considers it something completely different.
that's been a conversation
Yeah.
going on now for a number of years. So let's just go down the panel. You just want to make.
Oh, can I just make?
Please.
I mean, I agree with everybody. It's a tumultuous time for monetization, but I do think there's like a glimmer of hope at the end of the rainbow that's about to happen, and we deal with it all day long. Is like, what's your strategy? What's your SVOD strategy? You know, I have customers that have like 3 or 4 different subscription models inside their apps. In terms of paywalls and what they're allowed to release. So do I release one video for you for 99 cents? Do I give you a whole app that you can binge watch 12 pieces of content for $4.99? Or do I give you for $8 a month or $80 a year and give you 2 months off the whole kit and caboodle? I have clients that are doing that. That exact setup is the Rebel Media House, if you guys want to know. You can go look at them. And then they sell the $250 director's package where you get a t-shirt and a hat. But
Do they sell a lot of those?
they actually sold a lot of them, and I can't give you the numbers, but enough to pay for
T-shirts and the hats.
over
More
1,000
t-shirts.
over 1,000 units when they launched across OTT, and they're a pretty good, decent company. They're making real money. There's broadcasters like Anthony Camilla, who used to be up on Sirius Radio, who is literally doing a direct-to-consumer VOD play across every single platform we've talked about in here, and he is literally monetizing it at $6.99 a month, or I think it's $6.99 if you want your MP4 podcast, and $4.99 if you want to just stream it live. So like, that's the opportunity. But these people all had built-in audiences, and so I think there's a lot of wiggle room, and as technology gets better, you as a content seller or an influencer are going to be able to start playing around with this opportunity and then figure out the sweet spot for your brand, your content, that platform, and sell the hell out of it. I mean, that's the goal, right? We're all in the business of making money.
So we could spend the rest of the time just talking about monetization, but because I want to give everybody a shot. Anthony?
Yeah, let's go with programming.
Programming, why not?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is pretty interesting about being in the industry we're in is, years ago, there was 3 television networks before cable. There was a few people that controlled what was on, what people were able to watch. And then obviously that became a bit more fractured with cable and those networks. And now we've gotten to a point where a lot of the platforms are programming algorithmically. So one of the things, for instance, for Daily Motion, a user comes onto our platform, if they're as soon as they start watching content, our algorithms pick up what type of content they're watching, in what vertical. Metadata becomes a huge part of it, and then suddenly they're being fed related videos and in different placements, related content to what they've already watched. Obviously, anyone who uses Netflix knows that is a very advanced algorithm that they're constantly tinkering with. So programming has become much more focused on the user, and if you do a lot of A/B testing, it's almost impossible to have a curation process that is as effective at driving engagement as algorithms are. And yet, we find now, in order to get major media companies and major partners to use our platform, they want more and more guaranteed promotion and guaranteed placement. And it's very key then to have, a programming strategy that is curated, where you can manipulate and weight specific partners. And so I think that's kind of an interesting, kind of almost a little bit of a backlash to the completely algorithmically focused MO that platforms like YouTube have always used. And so it's just an interesting challenge.
Do you think that it's an interesting point you made. I'll just open to the panel. Do you think that we are going to move away from algorithms to other methodologies of programming, or do you think that even though there are some maybe isolated trends, but algorithms are they'll just continually get refined, and that's the way we're going? You're nodding your head up and down?
I think yes. I mean, it's as a consumer and as a content, well, first as a consumer, I really appreciate the fact that I can now see things or have things recommended to me that are within my interest based on the algorithm. I'll talk to Netflix specifically. I've seen more things on Netflix than I would ever have seen on my own by going out and searching them due to with the help of their algorithm. And so, from a consumer standpoint, I think it's fantastic. It's been great. From a content creator and from a company perspective, that we're going out and creating this content and spending millions of dollars to create shows. There's just become a higher demand for more programming. So from a creator standpoint, we're happy about the state of programming. I think there's a massive opportunity. I think it's going to be driven by more consumers watching, whether they're watching it on their phones, their connected device, their computer, their wall device. But the technology driving programming is actually a great thing, I think, overall for the consumer, and it's a great thing for creators.
And yet, one of the biggest complaints about YouTube is discoverability, right? Is like, how can I find it's just so much, how can I find what I really want to watch? So it's tough because,
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of the best developers in the world working on that algorithm, and yet still, one of the number one complaints, how can I discover what I want?
Quick comment here.
In the last century, there was always a big argument about how can a show stay on long enough to find an audience. So how is all of algorithms, how is all of this now playing out? Does it work in the favor of shows being so many that they can play longer so that they can find their audience, or they're just cycling through fast?
I mean, I would actually say it's really helping. I mean, things like Breaking Bad, never on network, never found their audience, was really discoverability, pass along, word of mouth. It just became a massive success, and it just just grew and grew and grew and grew. Grew so much as they even did sub-series after it. And so I think that back in the days where you had a couple of major networks, this is even before cable, where you just hoped you had a great time slot, and you hoped that someone was watching Barney Miller and you maybe got before or after. Fantastic. Nowadays it's I'm watching something on 30 for 30, and it's not just recommending 30 for 30 because I'm on ESPN, but it's recommending all sports documentaries because I watched 6 different 30 for 30. So I think it's only going to get better overall.
We've got just a few minutes left. Let's see if we can get through two more. Want to pick one, AJ?
What's the one, Larry? What's the one in the corner that I can't see?
Personalization, mobile.
Let's do personalization. Goes with strategy. You're just going to see a big trend with what YouTube did. You could like a video and you could stick it in your own little confines of a digital locker. We're seeing a lot of that. Personalization. Content creators custom curating just for you. Based upon what you watch, this goes into the algorithm play, we're able to ascertain you as a subscriber, all the different devices you logged in, what you watch. Netflix does this all the time. And then literally start recommending. That's going to increase consumption, which then increases revenue. In the OTT space, we have people that are creating custom curated digital lockers and then just selling them. Like, hey, here's 16 things I think you'd like. They'll be available for the next 45 days. Would you like to purchase them? I think that's going to help us as content folks if we're able to do that instead of just trying to shove in a one-size-fits-all model.
Does the concept of a digital locker appeal to people in the room here? Do you like the idea of somebody giving you...
Think about a mom who has a kid and the ability to save all the animation, the Finding Nemos. I have a 2-year-old, so like those things are gold.
I mean, it's a form of another form of curation. Does that seem appealing to you? Would you like to have more content curated for you, or do you like the discovery process on your own? Excuse me? Good question. Okay. Is there a good answer? Mike, you have a, what do you think, Mike?
I don't know that there's a single answer for that. I think it's both. I think we're all both. We want, there are times when you go and you want to check out a news feed or you want to find out about a specific topic, and then discoverability happens through recommendations and the algorithm, and it all sort of cycles together. It's one, so I think it's great, but I don't think it's ever going to be one or the other. It's going to be an ecosystem where they all play together.
Yes.
I think the idea of a content locker is pretty interesting to think about because it's been adapted so many ways throughout history. Like if you look at countries that might not be fully connected to the internet, for instance, China, Russia, Ukraine, they have hard drives or USB drives that have full curated content from the black market, obviously. But it's the same content.
Minor detail.
So, yeah. Or on the corner end of New York City, same thing. Guy's got a mixed CD with a whole bunch of stuff that he curated for you. So that kind of concept, it's been expressed all over history. I'm interested to see kind of what you were saying about going future of content lockers and maybe work with influencers and stuff like that. Where are the opportunities for the future and where do you see it going? Content lockers.
Anyone want to take a, where do you see the future of content lockers? You brought it up.
It's your idea, sir.
We got stuck with it.
You own it now.
Okay, so imagine a world where, let's say you're an independent film buff, all right? You could go out and resell me as a user over and over and over again a new content locker. So whereas Netflix is charging you $9 a month to get unlimited use of everything that we license, what if, once again, we're all on the premise of making money, we custom curated something special for you each month and I got you to resubscribe or repay or buy something different. And I got all that through the algorithm that told me, you've just watched the same skiing video 100 times. I think you might want to watch these movies. They're perfect for you. Rent them, buy them, subscribe to them. So those are, I think, where it's going to go as we're all starting to develop what's our strategy against these different platforms and where people are moving towards this, I want my content from any device, TV everywhere kind of style. And I just want to log on, I want to have my infrastructure, and I want it to act just like Netflix. But it's not going to be Netflix anymore. It's going to be full screen. It's going to be Zephyr. It's going to be Daily Motion. It's going to be Believe Entertainment. And Zype's going to be powering it all.
I do have to ask. And Google's going to buy them all, right?
Exactly.
I do have to ask the one question. Is there a Big Brother component to this that is kind of the dark side of it? There's a few little gasps in the room there, little groans. Is there a too much information is known about my preferences and my tastes and my interests and my desires and all that? Or just not an issue, I just like, I'll sell off that for the convenience?
I don't know if people care about that as much anymore.
Certainly younger generations
like,
don't care about that at all.
Like
Yeah.
below about 35 or so, I don't think it even enters into the mindset anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
From a privacy standpoint, I think it does. I mean, if you have a Netflix account and you have your 16-year-old daughter, your wife, and you're working on it, I mean, do you want to see what your 16-year-old daughter is watching? Probably. From a privacy standpoint, there's probably some pitfalls on it. I know a lot of kids don't want their parents to be policing them.
Well, as a parent with a minor, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But as two
An adult.
adults, maybe not. There's a couple of people who raised their hands here. Yes.
Yeah, just sort of a little bit of a follow-up question. Algorithms and personalization and Big Brother. Where do you guys see algorithms changing or not changing to be able to get to the sort of under 13 crowd that by law right now you can't really market to, yet there's an increasing amount of content that is on the web that is directly made for them, high quality, appropriate content for them. Do you guys have any thoughts or?
Having created animated series and having gone through the gauntlet with COPA, there are certain things that you really have to keep in mind. I mean, brands are prohibited from marketing to minors defined as below 13. However, if you look at the data, whether they want to share it or not, you look at something like YouTube and the amount of searches that are happening daily from kids from 5 years old. At 5 years old, these kids are actually probably more savvy than a lot of their parents, and they're basically just searching tons and tons of content, and they're out there seeing it. So, however, of those searches, it's hard for let's just talk about YouTube. It's hard for them to identify who that is. So I'm searching it, and someone searches NFL or Finding Nemo, and ironically, the new Finding Nemo movie's out, but there's an ad that goes in front of it. I mean, from the COPA standpoint, that's not allowed, but from a data standpoint, there's no way unless it's a specific subscriber sign-in, there's no way for them to really police it.
And even if there is, right, the kids are on the parents' accounts. So
Yeah.
that's where data and algorithms break down, and it's the whole, one of our entire theses of why we exist is using content as the signal. So not to plug too much, but I mean, we contextually target advertising against content, against actual videos and the content in those videos, so that we can avoid things like that, like who's the actual user, who signed in on the device. Those are all real problems.
So a couple other comments. Anybody else have a comment they want to say? Yes.
I have a question. Do millennials really like the personalization? Because I kind of feel like, to me, it seems like they like discovering things through their social networks, and kind of like that's their way.
So back to millennials wanting discovery versus having something given to them ahead of time.
Control.
I can chime in on that. Also, not to plug us too much either, but just a good example, I think, would be our full screen app, which is you can get it on Apple TV, you can get it on just your mobile device, but it's specifically targeted to millennials, and the discovery that we've built out for it is kind of funny. It really uses the millennial lingo to help you find content. So I have time to binge, or I have time to snack. You click that, and then I want to watch something that's dark AF, which is total millennial speak right there. But it uses those kinds of ways to help you find content, and they love it. It's doing really well. So.
LOL.
WTF.
It's something that's targeted based on your search inquiry and so on. You think you want this because it was research, right? How much of a factor is that when it's being moving forward, especially as we have more ability to identify who the user is, which is someone in the laptop, right? So pretty soon there'll be the ability for every one of your companies to sell me specifically, knowing that I'm sitting in front of the computer, exactly what the product that I want to see. Is that what's going on?
Yes. Yes, the kind of in-stream advertising you see nowadays is incredibly primitive. We're at a very, very early part of that process where, if you want to talk about personalization, I think more than any other part to our platform, we're trying to target advertising. I mean, for Daily Motion personally, when we were acquired by Vivendi last year, one of the first things they decided to do was invest in building our own SSP that we could control. We could have a control of an ad, what we call an ad controller, And then we have demand that would be handled through that, where we have Facebook, Google, as well as our own proprietary SSP handling an exchange, which would, if you have premium partners, we're partners with Fullscreen, for instance, NBC Universal, CBS, that you can make sure that premium advertising is targeted towards those premium partners, whereas if you had some more UGC style content, for instance, from a partner like Jukin, that advertisers that aren't as comfortable running in-stream advertising against that content would be able to be targeted. And then that's just what the advertisers want. What users want, obviously, where you're talking about right now, having a 30-second ad before a 2-minute video is absurd. And having that not targeted to the user is very primitive. What we're going to start doing is not only seeing more skippable advertising, but taking steps to make the skipping process to alleviate the amount of skipping. So you're actually starting to target that user based off cookies that they've picked up or whatever, however the technology evolves, so that the ads that are running against that are specifically targeted for those preferences. So I think that's, yes, that where we are right now from a programmatic advertising standpoint is extremely primitive.
So,
What's that? Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
yeah. So I will just say in close that there have been scenarios where I've seen, and not on Dailymotion, actually it was on YouTube, where a 1-minute piece of content followed a 2.5-minute movie trailer, which, talk about doesn't make sense, really doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, I've been told that we have to wrap up now. So what I wanted to say is this, and I've said this before, but I think it's especially true now, and that is, you take get a smart group of people like we have on this panel, and you guys as well, and we come back and do this in about 3 or 4 months, the conversation is going to be pretty different, because things keep on changing, things keep on evolving, and that's what's so fascinating about this business. So please join me in thanking our panel, and thank you for being here, and follow Deep Sports if you'd like. Hope to see you again soon.